y'all, and you missed my introduction, y'all. I am so sorry. I tell my guests to keep their mics muted, and I, of course, tonight forget to unmute my mic. Welcome to Profiles. Thank you for joining me. Tonight's show is going to be great. It's that time of year again to get your holiday gift list started, and tonight we're joined by some brilliant small business owners. First guest, Alyssa Black. My next guest is Amber Lee. Of course, you might remember Amber's episode was supposed to air a couple of weeks ago. There was an emergency that came up. She had to handle it. It's handled for the most part. She's here tonight to talk about Yes, Seriously Cereal Bar. It's a brilliant idea, you guys. And she's going to talk to us about why she decided to start a business in the middle of a pandemic. So I can't wait to hear Amber's story. Next up is Andrea Lorig. I've been following Andrea for some time now. She is amazing. She is a true boss babe, you guys. She works a 9-to-5 and runs 2 businesses, 2. So that means she has 3 jobs. I can't handle my only job, well, my 9-to-5, much less my show. Next we have, let me come down in my list, Miss Karina Richards, and she is the owner and operator of I'm sorry, I had to pronounce it for me at the beginning of the show while we were in the green room. Karina, tell me again.
It's really strange. It's Machka.
Machka. Now you have to tell us the inspiration behind the name before we go to the interview. Tell us the inspiration behind the name.
Okay, so in my early 20s, I actually got to live in Hungary for a couple of years as a missionary. I learned Hungarian, and I love cats. So Machka actually means cat in Hungarian.
Okay. And it's so interesting, the things that inspire us as we start these businesses and start to put our passions to work. And Karina, since we are talking with you right now, tell us about your business.
Yes, and it's okay if you pronounce it however you read it. It looks like Maxka. I don't expect anybody to actually know how to say it in Hungarian unless you're curious. But while I was living in Hungary, I got to see a lot of people work in careers focused around art. And I grew up in a very science-based household, and I thought I was on track to be a microbiologist. But after living in Hungary, I came back and changed my major to art, and then started a design studio while I was still in school. I wanted to make sure that I still had time for myself to make my own artwork while I was finishing my art teaching degree. And so I was an art teacher for a couple of years, and I worked in my design studio on the side as well. So it was mostly for me to make sure I was still sharp on my skills and had something for myself to do.
Well, I'm sure your parents, and I don't want to speak for them, but I'm sure they were very surprised when you came home and said, Mom, Dad, I want to be an artist.
I thought so too. And then they actually said to me, oh, well, we were wondering when this would happen.
Oh, really? Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, it's good you have that support base, because a lot of times parents are a little disappointed when you don't follow the path that they had hoped or envisioned for you to follow. So that's awesome.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you. It was a nice surprise to me. I had always loved art. They had my kindergarten painting hung up in our dining room for years. I just didn't know that they would support it as a career path, and they did. So that was great.
Well, that's beautiful. Now tell us what type of artwork, how would you classify what you do? How would you title it? How would you classify it?
This is a great question. I go back and forth quite often. I think my long title is graphic designer and illustrator, because it allows me to encompass the digital artwork that I work in, as well as like paper mediums with watercolor and acrylic. And so I offer graphic design and illustration services.
Interesting. I really love your work. I love the fact that you give the viewer the opportunity to interpret, especially your I don't know what, I guess your the images that you create of people. For me, it gives me an opportunity to envision the person's features. I may have seen a picture of them in your feed or in their feed, and then it gives me an opportunity to envision through your work how they look, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. And thank you. That was my intention. So
Yeah.
I'm not a very photogenic person unless like you catch me at the exact moment. Like those photographers are magic for me. But
Uh,
sometimes my mouth is open or I'm looking the wrong way or I'm blinking. And so my artwork allows people to have pictures of themselves that may not be a perfect photographic shot, but something that they enjoy. And then the faceless features kind of just allow them to imagine what they would want for themselves.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Andrea, tell us about your well, first, tell us how you manage 3 jobs. 3 jobs. Not one, but 3.
Um, yes. So in my 9 to 5, I am a CPA. That is what I have done for many years. I also have a master's in couple and family
Really?
therapy. Yes, long story. We'll get into that. I will share that with you later. But I had, envisioned maybe switching careers, but things don't always work out the way we think. But rest assured, I use those skills every single day.
Mhm.
I think a big thing is that my children are older. I have my children are 21 and 19, so that gives me, of course, more time than I would have had they been younger. And also, too, my husband and I just celebrated our 25th anniversary last month, and I think having a supportive partner also makes a difference in that as well. So I will attribute all of those things, and also, too, when I am focused and I want something, like many of us, we just kind of do what we just get in there and we do it and we make it happen. So I think having older children, that frees up time, having a supportive partner, and also to the motivation, that intrinsic motivation to want this for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's more of a selfish type of thing. In this case, selfish is good. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, it was one of those, when I originally started, my kids were probably in elementary, middle school, and I wanted something that was mine. Like I wanted something just for me. While, I mean, I enjoy my career and I enjoy what I do, women tend to be classified by who they birth and who they partner with. So I was often known as so-and-so's parent mom or so-and-so's wife. And I also craved that, using that other part of my brain, that more creative side of my brain. As a CPA, there's not a lot of creativity going on there. It kind of is what it is. Although I enjoy my job, it doesn't leave a lot of room for that. And this opens that up and leaves a lot of room for that for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And tell us about your businesses.
So I, like I said, my 9 to 5. So these are, I guess you would say, direct sales. So the first one is Color Street Nails. They are made here in the USA in New Jersey. And I was always one who, liked to do my nails and all of those things. So it was a great fit for me. It has to be something that I would use and love. So they come, like this, and they're 100% nail polish, and they adhere right to your nails. And they last, 10, 14 days. And it actually wound up being, because this I started last November, March, of course, pandemic hit, and nail salons were closed, and a lot of them still are, or people just aren't comfortable going back. So I found that this is great. Yeah. And also the other one is Scout and Cellar, which is clean crafted wine. I had actually stopped drinking wine for years because I just didn't feel good after I drank it. After a glass, I just didn't feel good. And I was introduced to this because the founder of this company also had the same issues, and discovered that it was for her, and probably for me, some of the additives that are added into wine that caused that morning after just feeling. And for me, it wasn't just that I felt like I'd had something to drink. I just didn't feel good.
Sure.
And so this came along, and I was like, okay. And we all know, for most of us, wine is ubiquitous. There's a birth, there's wine. There's a death, there's wine. There's a wedding, there's a divorce, there's a party, there's a whatever. And so all of those things, it had to make sense as well for me, because it's something that I want to offer, that someone needs, that someone would be interested in, because, it really doesn't do me any good if I'm the only one consuming it. And so these wines are made, they're sourced from all over the world, often small family-owned farms where the people have been farming grapes and making wines for generations, which is also important to me because, again, small business. So whether you like red wine, red, white, sparkling, all different ones, we have those for you here. So,
and I like what you said about, first, of course, having something that allows you to tap into that creative part of your brain, but also it's a selfish type of thing in a good way, but you're also doing it as a service to other people, women specifically, because a lot of times we get so, like you said, caught up in our roles that we forget who we are, and to have an outlet to express those creative things is really important.
Absolutely. And my kids know that I love them, to the ends of the world, but I'm also more than just someone's mother. And, I had a whole other self and being and way of life before I had those children. So this helps me tap into that.
Right. Exactly. Amber, now this is the question of the century. First, congratulations on Yes Seriously. And you guys, I've known Amber for a while. We reconnected on Facebook. I've been following her journey, and she all of a sudden she opened up the cereal bar, and of course, all of a sudden we had a pandemic. So the two of them collided, and it's a wonderful combination. So first, Amber, tell us, why did you open up a business in the middle of a pandemic, and how has this pandemic supported the business?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was given the opportunity to meet in a group with other people who have business ideas, but we also had a coach. So just being able to be in a space with other people who are brainstorming and sort of working through visions and ideas is really important. And so I took advantage of that. The coach was really amazing. He helped us. I know I was really skeptical of opening or even like moving forward with the class because I was afraid, like, restaurants are closing, bars are closing, and even small businesses that aren't in hospitality or food are closing still. So that was nerve-wracking. But I think one of the things was, like, I was really afraid of it. And I can either let go of this really cool and exciting vision that I had because of fear, or I could take advantage of the pandemic. Like, I hate to say it, but because these things are closing, that gives me space to open, right? Like, I don't have a lot of competition, it can look at it that way. So yeah, it was this opportunity with a coach, and then opportunity to really take hold of that fear and make something out of it. And so far, it's been fun and exciting.
That is brilliant and beautiful and empowering all at the same time. But so often we allow fear to hinder us and to stop us dead in our tracks, and we relinquish the dream. But you allow the fear to fuel you, to move you forward, and here you are. Yep. Alyssa, you too opened a business in the middle of a pandemic. What was the inspiration behind Yaya Books, and how has this pandemic allowed you to move forward in this creative literary space?
Yeah, so Yaya Books has been on my mind for a while now. It was actually this year where I actually got the name for it. And the name came from my father. My father's name was Harold Gant, and he passed in 2006. So my dad was an artist. He was also an author. And before he passed, he was working on an autobiography called Waiting for My Yaya. So the biography, it never got published. It's still in a binder. So, and it's handwritten. He never got a chance to type it or finish it. So I said, Waiting for My Yaya. Let me just take Yaya, since he was working on the book, and put Yaya Books together and put out a bookstore. Now, my father inspired the name behind Yaya, but my community actually inspired the vision for a bookstore. So whatever I do in life, I always take it back to my community. So I have a group of girls in my neighborhood, and the neighborhood is called Oxford Village. I've lived there for about 21 years. And I befriended a group of girls in that neighborhood. I think there were about 10 of them. And there were so many things happening in that neighborhood that I felt like was trying to destroy the community, and I couldn't just sit back and let it happen. So I would take time to spend with the girls and just kind of distract them from some of the things that were happening. And from there, I would hear certain things. They would confide in me. We talk about image. We talk about their hair and how to love their hair, their 4C hair, the way that it is, how to love their skin. And I started realizing that the kids in my community, they just need somebody to listen to them. They need somebody to affirm them. So one day I was at my 9 to 5, and
That's right. You have a 9 to 5 too.
I came across a book fair, and I was just at the book fair browsing, and I saw a book called I Am Enough by Grace Byers. I think Grace Byers was on Empire. So she wrote I Am Enough, and it just really speaks to affirming the unique beauty in a child. So I bought 10 copies of that book, and I took it home and gave it to the girls in my neighborhood. And from there, it kind of sparked that fire to start a bookstore that speaks to the beauty of Black people. So Yaya Books is a bookstore that sells books written by Black authors and books that speak to the Black experience, because I feel it's so important to highlight and amplify Black voices.
Yeah, let me just tell you, I don't know if my mic was on when I said this piece, but if it wasn't, or if it was, you just have to hear it again. I'm just leaping for joy inside. I taught Alyssa years ago. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, and I won't tell you how old she is. But to hear her articulate this, it's just, it makes me so proud and so happy and so thrilled for you, Alyssa. And you're also a poet, so I'm sure that this every literary experience that you've had certainly speaks to Yaya Books.
Yes, definitely.
That's
Definitely.
awesome.
I've always felt like I was headed in the direction, whether it was poetry, writing my own book, or a bookstore. It's just kind of been the way my life was set up and the way God guided me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's awesome. That's awesome. So now that we know a little bit more about you ladies and your businesses, I want to, dig in just a little bit deeper. No business is ever successful at the beginning. There are challenges and, doubts and all of these things that can feed into your willingness to stay in the game. So I guess my first question is, let's go back. Let's talk about the challenges you've had. So what's been the most memorable challenge that you've had in starting your business, and how did you release that? How did you break through that to keep pushing forward? Karina, let's hear from you.
Okay, I grew up as a very, very shy child. And so I liked the idea of businesses, but interacting with other people and marketing myself was traumatizing. I was like, I don't know what to say. I need someone to like coach me through this. And so just those few times of like pitching an idea to someone or charging someone for a fee for a flyer design, while it was nerve-wracking and felt embarrassing, it was really empowering to finish that conversation and realize, okay, I did it. Maybe not everything was perfect in that conversation, and I could have changed how I said a couple of things, but just trying it and doing that first thing made it easier with each step. And so usually it's just the starting part that is
and
the
how
most
now
memorable
do
for me.
you move through or journey through that whenever it rears its head, when fear and the anxiety of having to tell people how much you're charging, what do you do to move yourself through that so that you can get to the other side of that conversation?
Yes, that's a great question. And I had to think, for my experience, just starting initially and learning that your market is very large. Like there are lots of different artists in the art realm. You're not competing for the same people. And if you are, there's still a portion of the market that wants exactly what you're giving and what you're creating. And so for me to learn that there's space for everyone, and that there's space for me, and that my work is valuable, was something that I had to take into consideration and really remember. But also just for myself, just to remember that I can create my own spaces. I didn't see a lot of people like me making art. And, there are always questions of personal doubt while you're moving through your own business of like, is this still a good idea? XYZ didn't really work out. Should I be moving forward towards the next step? But telling myself like I can create my own spaces if I don't see it. And that's usually what has allowed me to draw more people into my market and towards my art.
I really love what you said there. I can create my own spaces. There's this meme that says something like, no one is you and that is your superpower. So only you can create what you create, and there are people around you that want what you have. That's awesome. That's
exactly.
awesome.
And just being able to trust yourself. Like you have your ideas, and your ideas are what make you unique. And that's why people come to your business. Wow. And just remembering that and being confident in that.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Amber, what's been to date the biggest challenge that you've had in launching Yes Seriously? And how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so in the very beginning, when I was still in this class, there was a car accident across the street, and a car had completely driven into the building that I was going to be in. And that would be a space for other, entrepreneurs that were going to move in there. So, that was my first pivot. I had to let go of this design that I had for my space. And I had to go into a temporary space, which is now going to be permanent. And so that was really challenging. It was sad because I put so much emotional energy into what I wanted my space to look like. But I had to completely let that go. So, today that was like the most challenging thing and like just craziest thing that's happened so far.
Wow. And it's so important. We go into situations with this vision in our head. And many times when that vision doesn't play out, we feel so defeated, but to have that awareness that things happen, life happens, you just have to push through it and understand that on the other side of it is something even greater than what you thought you were going to get. And it sounds like that's the case for you.
Yeah. And I think also too, I wanted to maintain excellence. Like, even if I, am in this space that is not what, was a part of the plan. Okay, I'm in this storage closet that I transform into my own space. And even if I'm in this temporary space that is now going to be where I am, I'm going to make the most of that. Like, I'm resourceful. I know what looks good. Like one of my gifts is, beautifying things. And so I'm going to take what God has given me and I'm going to use that to my advantage. And so that's what made me not give up. Because I could have, like, this car was completely in the building and there's no way that I could be in there. But I had people who told me, like, imagine if you had moved in there and the car accident happened, you would have lost everything.
Yep.
So it's just like looking at things as, not, things don't happen to hurt you, right? Like, sometimes things happen to, teach you something or to point out that, like, you have the ability to move forward. And so that's what I took from that specific challenge.
Wow, that is powerful. That is powerful. So this closet is your launch pad to your own storefront, and your storefront probably potentially to a franchise. So having that broader perspective, that broader outlook, that's powerful. That's powerful. Andrea, what's been the most meaningful challenge to date, and how did you get through it?
I think it's remembering or just having an abundance versus scarcity mindset for, I mean, just for life in general, but specifically for these businesses. I mean, when you think about how many people are in America, and there's always people, and there's always a market, and there's always an audience, there's always a niche. It's sometimes just a matter of finding that and settling in. I mean, you go on Amazon, I mean, there's a market for anything, there's a market for everything under the sun. So I think for me, just as a matter of just as life lessons, and just, you know, being an adult and navigating through this world, is remembering scarcity versus abundance, because sometimes, you know, you put stuff out there and you get no response. You have friends and family who you were sure were going to support you. And let's be clear, support comes in many, many different forms, whether that's just referrals, sharing, trying the product, just sharing the information. You have friends and family who you were sure were going to support you, and they decide, you know, that they're not going to. So sometimes you're putting stuff out there and you're putting it out there, and it seems like nobody's hearing, nobody's listening. So I think the hardest thing for me is to keep moving forward in those times where you're not getting a lot of necessarily feedback, good or bad. It's just, you wonder, are people listening? Are people hearing? Is this something that people want? But I then have to remind myself, there's an abundance for everyone. There is something for everyone. It's just a matter of finding it. And then it's also sometimes realizing that, you know what, everybody's not my audience, and that's okay. And being okay with that, I think in general, I think generally speaking for women, it's a lot harder when there is a no, or what feels like a personal rejection, and remembering that 99.99% of it, it's not personal, and being able to push forward through that and not get stuck. So I think for me, that has been probably the hardest and most rewarding lesson, to keep pushing forward and keep going, because I learn no matter what. No matter what the bottom line is, I learn. I meet new people. Some of the best people I have met have been through these businesses. So regardless of that part of it, even though that's important, I think there's also very important life lessons about perseverance and resilience, and pushing forward and honing in your message and finding your audience. So I think that's been, key for me.
And two, just to add to that, I think it's important for us to also remember, we don't know who's watching, you know,
Exactly.
and that no may be a no. Maybe the next time I'll think about it. And then when it's time to shop, oh yeah, Andrea had the X, Y, and Z. So certainly remembering that people are watching and they are remembering. It's just not the right time now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Alyssa, what's been your most challenging season, and how did you work through it as a newly launched business?
It's definitely been comparing myself to others. I struggled so much with that, and it stopped me in the past before, but this time it almost got me. I just had to keep persevering. But I remember the week before we launched, I was telling my friends, I don't know if I should do this. You know, there are X, Y, and Z businesses doing it like me. You know, why would anybody shop with me? What's so special about me if they can just go somewhere else? And I was just getting all in my head, psyching myself out. And then I just realized, just like you said earlier, about the superpower. I can't remember exactly.
No one
what
is you,
said.
and that's your superpower.
Exactly. No one is you, and that is your superpower. And my friends would just tell me, you know, you have something special. Everybody is different, and people will find you. Your audience will find you. You have to remember your target audience. And I've been so surprised by the overwhelming amount of support that I've received. I mean, literally the first week I was on my knees crying, because I just couldn't believe that, you know, so many people were finding me, people that I've never seen before, I've never talked to, but they were finding my business, and they were sharing such sweet messages like, I support you, I'm proud of you. And it just really made me realize that everything that I was thinking in my head was a lie.
Yeah.
And we tell ourselves so many lies. We get caught up in all these fallacies about who we think that we are, and none of it is true. You just have to push yourself out there and persevere, and then you'll be so totally surprised.
Yeah. Jump and the lily pad will appear. Jump
Right.
and the lily pad. And it always does. And I don't want to talk more than you guys, but I had this thought when I was in the shower, and I do my best thinking when I'm showering. That might be too much information. But anyway, I was thinking about how I had so many doubts about launching profiles. And, nobody's going to watch. Oh my gosh, it's going to take so much work. Oh my, all of these things. How am I going to get to this? And I don't have that. But with each show, everything has fallen into place. And I implore those who are watching, if you're thinking about starting a business, if you're thinking about launching whatever it is, don't listen to the negative Nancys or the doubtful Daves in your head, because they always lie. They always lie. It's not until you step out there and do the work, start the work, that the work will become meaningful. Not necessarily easy, but you get into a groove. So it's about finding your groove, and it sounds like each of you have found your groove, and you're working it, and you're reaching out to your target audience, and you're doing the things that you have to do to get your product out there. And that's a beautiful, beautiful lesson and a beautiful, beautiful experience. Talk to me a little bit about, so we hear the word small business, but so much work goes into running and owning and operating a small business. Do you think the word small negates the huge work and investment that you have to put into your business? Amber, what are your thoughts about that? Should they be called big businesses instead of small businesses because of the work you have to put into it?
My God. I'm new to being an entrepreneur. The only thing I can say is that it is big work, like I don't have partners. I'm doing everything on my own, and that is big work. So I don't think small negates it at all. I think it just magnifies the work that's behind the scene, when it comes to making your logo, showing up every day. I know when I first started thinking about my hours, I had to change it. Like I didn't want to commit on the weekends because, that's, a lot of people don't work on the weekends. We have a 9 to 5, or I'm used to having a 9 to 5 during the week. And I wouldn't want to work on the weekends, but I had to change that, for more opportunity with my business. I don't think so. I think it's big work.
What does a typical day look like for you in operating Yes Seriously? I'm curious actually. What does a regular day look like for you?
So normally I have a few people trickle in throughout the day. Saturdays are the busiest, and I have families come in, couples with their children, grandparents. So my audience, or not my audience, but my customer base is pretty big. But it's been slow since Rhode Island has gone to, phase 2 of the pandemic. But it looks like me just showing up and being present, which is challenging, but it's exciting. When I don't have customers, I'm looking for things that I can be working on. So whether it's menu or adding new creations to my menu or perfecting a recipe that I have. So it just looks like continuing to nurture what already created.
Right, exactly. And I love how you said, you didn't want to work on the weekends, but because that's what your audience needed, you had to change that. You had to, rethink your operations and of course your operating hours. And sometimes, that tug and pull can be a little difficult at first, but you realize, oh yeah, this is when I need to be here at this time to meet the needs of the people. Yeah, that's good stuff. Good stuff. Let's see. Y'all, I forgot the question I just asked. Oh, I'm getting too old for this. Yeah, so Alyssa, what are some tips you can offer? Well, first, I want to rewind. When did you realize that Yaya Books was something that needed to be put forth in the atmosphere, if you will? Like this is what, it's time. I need to do this.
I have to say it was the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
because I got so much time. Before the pandemic, I was just running full speed ahead,
Yeah.
so busy,
Mm-hmm.
bouncing from the bus, the train to the office, then bus, train, home.
Mm-hmm.
My life was just consumed with getting to work and then actually working. And I
Right.
didn't really have any time in between. So the pandemic really allowed a lot of time to just slow down and reconnect to dreams. So I started going back to my childhood, and I've been dealing with so much so much childhood stuff this year. So I was just thinking about all of the things that I wanted to do when I was younger, things that came up in my life that I kind of put on the back burner. And then one day I just said, I have to do this. It's time. It just came out of nowhere. It just said it's time. And I jumped and I just went forth with it. And I'm so glad that I did. And I feel like if I was still going to work every day, I probably would have delayed it and kept delaying it even further. So it's really been a blessing in disguise.
That's awesome, because the pandemic has really forced a lot of people to rethink or to remember. I love how you said that, to remember their dreams. And so, what better time than now? What better time than now?
Right.
Polina, how has the pandemic impacted your business, or has it impacted at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am actually a stay-at-home mom right now, and I had initially started my business so that I could have a way for me to continue creating and designing and keeping up with my skills once we had children and I stayed home. So we have a 3-year-old, and so I've been home for the last 3 years. We also have a 9-month-old. And the pandemic has mostly just changed their routines of playing and play dates. So now a lot of my work is scheduled for the morning hours. We have work time in the office, and we all come into the office together. They have their little seats next to me, and they have their show on and like their snacks, and we work for a good 2 hours in the morning because that's when I feel the most fresh. And then the rest of my work happens after bedtime or on the weekends when my husband is home and can take care of the kids. So there hasn't been a lot of change with that, except that my coworkers are a little bit more antsy because they don't get to go out and play with friends.
I'm sure that's very challenging for the young children, for all of us, really, if I'm being honest, for all of us, but certainly for the children who are so used to being engaged and playing and exploring, and right now they can't do that as much. I know I think you have a piece of art that you can show us, because I've seen your work and it's beautiful, but I would love for others to see.
Yeah, so specifically during the pandemic, my portraits have taken a higher role in my business. I do book illustrations and logo designs for businesses and branding, but the portraits have been really nice because, there we go, it just emphasizes the closeness of family. And so they're faceless portraits, and I really enjoy patterns if people wear them. There we go. And just the proximity of the subjects. People are away from their family members, and so just taking a snapshot of
that's beautiful
the kids and then turning it into an illustration allows them to hold that memory as well and remember, we still have our loved ones. Everyone can still feel close even if they're not together during quarantine. And so a lot of my portraits are based on families and just special events for people that want to maybe turn portraits, photographic portraits into an illustrated gift, which makes it special, especially because we can't visit people.
Right.
Weddings, anniversaries, birthdays, those have been special for me to help people bring a gift to their family members through art.
It's really amazing how, just hearing your stories, how the nucleus, if you will, or the nucleus, or the common thread through all of these is the pandemic made me do it, or I want to offer these opportunities for women who aren't able to do the things that they did pre-COVID. So for instance, going to the salon all the time, getting their nails done, or enjoying time with their girlfriends. You all are taking advantage of what has been a terrible, terrible devastation, and flipping it to not only benefit you and your families, but to benefit other people. And that's powerful in and of itself. Andrea, what impact, if any, has the pandemic had on your business?
I think for the nails, that's actually been great because I'm in Maryland, and so we vacillate between phase 2, phase 3, depending on what county you're in. You could be in a lower phase as well. So I have found that it was right on time for those who weren't quite ready to go back to the salon yet, or their salons are closed. So that has been great. And again, for the wine, I mean, it's wine delivered to your front door. So when a lot of people were, at least here in Maryland, were really asked not to leave their homes unless they were essential for a couple of months. So that has been great. I had done, in-person tasting. So of course that has affected that as well. But, you get creative and you find ways to do that, whether that is, here, I'm going to drop some off and we're going to do a tasting via Zoom, things like that. So you just kind of, like most people with most things, you pivot and you try to figure out a way to kind of make it work for you. And I think that's been the case with these two particular things.
Andrea, and I want to stick with you for a few minutes. I know the industry that you're in terms of your business is, like you said, direct sales or network marketing or social selling. That industry gets a bad rap. People don't like it because of experiences they've had with other leaders in these organizations, in these businesses. What would you tell a person that's watching tonight or that'll watch the replay? Why network marketing or direct sales or social selling, whatever term you want to give it, why is that something that they might want to consider, especially during these times?
Well, I think that, first and foremost, it's important to do your homework as you would with any business, whether you're going to start direct sales or you're going to do a brick and mortar or an online business. I think it's important to do your research and research the company, research the product, make sure it's something that you would enjoy selling, that you would enjoy talking about. And I think for me, I think that it has, a direct and immediate impact for my family. And I think that's very important. So someone who because a lot of industries now have hiring freezes, they're not hiring, they're closing their doors. And even as we like to call, like, secondary and tertiary ripple effects from other businesses closing that has an effect on businesses around them. So there are a lot of people, for many different reasons that we may not even think about, who cannot get a job in their industry, or those businesses that we don't necessarily think about are closing. And I think that this is a way to, if you aren't interested in opening your own entrepreneurial brick and mortar kind of thing, this is a viable option. I think for me, like I said, it has a direct and immediate impact on my family. And I think small businesses in America are anywhere from one person sole proprietorship to sometimes up to a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand. So that encompasses a lot of things. And when you support me, I think you directly impact my family, you directly support my family. And I think to remember that you also directly support and impact your local economy and what is going on, because then you have the resources to reinvest in those companies and those things in your own community. So I think that is important to realize. And I think that also too, I think that women, generally speaking, of course, are the ones that no matter what's going on, we bear the brunt of childcare and figuring out things in the home when there's a pandemic and work schedules change and all those things. So I think this is also a way to have something that is flexible, because my business is flexible. I mean, I do work consistently part-time, but like I said, I work a full-time job. So I think this is definitely, whether you have children at home or you're still working at home and you need extra income, hours have been cut. This really is a way to be flexible and have direct and immediate impact on your family. And I think, again, on your local economy.
Right.
And the well-being of families in the local communities.
And that's big to remember right now, because the economy in general has taken a hit. Your local economy can be edified, uplifted, sewn into, all of these good and positive things. So that's tremendous. And so you guys, if you're considering or need, extra income to support your existing job, or if you're jobless right now, certainly direct sales, network marketing, social selling, that's a viable industry to consider for yourself and for your family.
Absolutely.
So Amber, at the top of the show, I told you guys that I wanted to certainly talk about this particular subject that I'm about to mention, and it feeds perfectly ties in perfectly with this pandemic scenario. Black-owned businesses, minority, I don't like the word minority, but businesses owned by women of color, or people of color in general, women of color now for this show specifically, they certainly took a tremendous hit. But the script was flipped, and people were talking about investing now into Black-owned businesses owned by people of color. And so it was really important for me to have this conversation tonight with women who fit this description. And so I want to ask you ladies, why do you think it's important for the audience, for people to patron businesses owned by Black women, women of color? Amber, we'll start with you. Amber, can you hear? There we go.
Yes, my Wi-Fi is a little spotty, so I apologize.
No worries.
Yeah, I think that's a really question. I have the opportunity to learn a lot about that from the woman who gave me the opportunity even to start my business. And I've learned a lot from her about how people of color, specifically African American, don't have a lot of resources, or just us coming together and sharing our resources, and just recycling resources within our own community, which is really important. So I don't have like a big answer, because I'm still learning about what that looks like, what that means, and even in my own business, I'm seeing how important it is, to support small businesses. And the cool thing about having a cereal bar and also doing grilled cheeses is that I sell food, and even in a pandemic, people have to eat, so going to the grocery store and buying milk and cereal, you can come to Seriously and support me and what I'm doing, and then also you can eat. So it's a win-win for both me and the customer.
And Amber, you don't have. I appreciate the humility behind that response, and I think a lot of times we feel, because we don't have all the experience in the world, or we haven't been in a particular space for as long as the next person, our experience may not be as big or as meaningful or as impactful. But I appreciate the humility behind your response, because you leave yourself open to grow in this experience. And that's tremendous, because as you grow, you will see the importance even more of people patroning, yes, seriously, but of course patroning your business as a African American Black woman owned business. So that's beautiful. Alyssa,
Yeah.
why is it important for people to shop with you? Oh, I'm sorry, Amber.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention Alyssa, and I, relate to comparing myself to people who are already doing what I'm doing. So I really appreciate the fact that you mentioned that.
Yeah. And so, Alyssa, why is it important for people to shop small, and certainly shop small with you, an African American Black woman?
I think it's important because small businesses, especially businesses owned by people of color, they're often an afterthought. I know that within our communities, we don't always think of it as an afterthought, but in the grand scheme of things, they are not the businesses that are at the forefront when we think about shopping. So I think it's very important because, as Andrea said, it builds the community, it builds economy. And when you shop small, you're directly impacting that family. You're directly impacting the person who owns that business. So that money is going to put food on the table. That money is going to pay a light bill or to pay rent. But not only that, you're also connecting with people on an intimate level. So you get to understand the story behind somebody's journey. You get to really feel like you're invested in that company. And I think it's a lot deeper than purchasing stock on the stock market. You have a different type of stock when you actually feel connected to that small business's journey and that business's story. I feel it's deeper and it's more personal than just investing, playing the stock market for a large company.
Yeah.
It's a personal
that,
connection.
Yeah, I tell you, I beam with joy and pride when I hear Alyssa speak. Karina, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Thank you.
Karina? Mm-hmm.
Oh, there you go. I was clicking the wrong microphone. So a perfect question, especially for this year of 2020, a year of a pandemic. A lot of social injustices have been brought to light, and a lot more people are aware of gaps in equity and capital between different demographics and racial groups. And right now, I think shopping with a small business that's also women owned and by a woman of color allows people to be more active in their anti-racism work and to be more active in their communities. I know Alyssa mentioned us being an afterthought, and some of that might be in regards to institutional structures that push us out. Oftentimes women as a demographic are forgotten, and then even more so our group as women of color, we're even more forgotten. And so when people expand their horizons of who they can shop with, especially if you're local to the area, it allows them to create a bridge between two different people, to understand their story, to understand where they're coming from and why they own their business and why they want to create a product or share their services with them. And for me, in my illustration work, I really enjoy that it's representative of everyone. I was always the one person that looked like me in several rooms and spaces growing up, and even in my career. And so being able to be more inclusive in my work allows me to expand my network to include everyone. And so that's also something that I think you get when you are shopping with a small business that's owned by a woman of color, is that extra level of inclusivity as well.
I feel so empowered right now. You women are amazing. You are truly amazing. Just amazing. Andrea, let me get your thoughts on that.
I think it's important to shop with women-owned businesses and, African American or women of color, because we know on this panel that anything that impacts America, particularly in a negative way, disproportionately affects our community. And so the pandemic has been going on since March. And so we know that there has been a lot of people without jobs, people fewer hours, not being able to pay their bills and all those things. So, but it affects our community more. And so again, when you invest in women-owned companies, women of color-owned companies, you are, again, directly impacting that economy and directly impacting a family, a woman, a business that has probably been hit harder than maybe the same business owned by someone who's not a woman of color. And I think this year also, too, with the racial and social justice issues that have been brought to light, things that we know about and that we live and we understand, I think they have been brought to light. And we understand that our country as a whole, again, access to capital, I think, as Karina said, is not always there for us on an equal basis. And then it's also, too, I think, sometimes overcoming the stereotypes put forth for women of color that we, of course, had nothing to do with, and how they have been created. Almost became like a self-fulfilling prophecy in the country, because equity and capital aren't available to us, so you don't see the businesses as well. So then people assume that maybe we're not qualified or we don't know how, or those kind of things. So I think it's important to remember that Black women in particular are the most educated group in America. We are highly capable of starting and running successful businesses, but we need our communities and people to understand that we are there. We might not get the same exposure, the same marketing, the same things that maybe another business gets. So in a lot of instances, through no fault of our own, we're starting a few steps behind, a few more hurdles. So I think that it's important to remember, again, that all those things come into play and, I guess, resulted in where we are now. So I think it's important it's also, in the age of Amazon and things that make it really easy, I think is also people have to make an effort to remember to shop, in general, shop local, period, in their communities, because with a few clicks, it'll just be put on your door. So I think it's important, and we have to do, in general, better job of reminding people that they're all local businesses, they're all local women-owned businesses, and putting that energy and effort into reminding people as well. And I lost my train of thought right there, but just to remember that, again, it affects us directly and impacts our family. So I think, again, it's just important to remember to make an effort. And this is my plug to remind people to look for those opportunities in your community, in your local, for anything that you can buy. Probably anywhere you can find someone local, and you could probably find a woman of color who does it and will do a really good job and will provide stellar customer service for you, and that excellence that you will get on a daily basis. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies, for your thoughts on that question, because a lot of times, sometimes there are those who don't find the opportunity to answer that question in a way that is rooted in their truth, and for you all to speak to this topic, it's rooted in your truth and in your knowing. And so I appreciate your transparency in your response to that. Now I want to talk about, because of course, again, Small Business Saturday is November 28th. The biggest shopping day of the year is in 2 weeks. What products that you have found over, I guess, the course of the last year, maybe 2 years,